And I think that's what I love about being in a restaurant, just that feeling of knowing that someone who wants to be cooking is cooking for me, and someone who, knows about wine can, teach us a thing or two. Or it's nice to kind of experience that. Like it's actually such a privilege to be able to do that, I think, as well.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Food is something every human connects with. To break bread and share food at a communal table allows us to break down political and cultural barriers, social and religious differences, and allows us to celebrate our similarities. We all know what delicious feels like, even though it may be represented so differently in all the glorious cultures and cuisines in the world. In some sense, food has no borders, and at a time when everyone is impacted by the pandemic, food has a unique power of making us all feel united. Sharon Salloum is the owner of Almond Bar and 3 Tomatoes. Sharon, how are you going?
Hey, Anthony, how are you? Good, thank you.
I'm good. Thanks for joining us. How are you feeling at the moment? It's been a pretty wild couple of months.
Well, I think you wake up most mornings and you don't know whether to laugh or to cry. So it's it's really strange.
Now, we touched base right at the beginning of this pandemic, and I sent you an email and sort of to find out how the hell you're going to adapt to this lockdown. And I think you started with the sort of whole food packs. That probably feels like a couple of years ago. What was the initial thing that you did when the shutdown happened?
Well, look, it's to cut a long story short, my sister was the brilliance behind it all. But because basically I was on my first holiday with my partner for 3 years, as in like we hadn't had a holiday together in the last 3 years, and so we decided to go to Mexico and Cuba at the beginning of March. And so came home a few days early and had to self-isolate at home for a couple of weeks. So in that time, basically remotely, I was trying to support my sister who had just changed the business model for both places very quickly. And I was just kind of trying to support, obviously, remotely in that, doing stuff like ordering, doing like menu IDs, et cetera, et cetera. And she essentially kind of went around and changed the way we serviced everything, everyone, all that we did had completely changed, literally almost overnight. So, we had to focus on takeaway, obviously, at the restaurant, and same at the cafe. Yeah, and that's where it kind of all began.
Well, I just want to touch back on the fact that you're in Mexico and you had to come back early and isolate. What was that experience like? How did you feel?
Oh, look, anxious as all hell. I mean, I have bouts of anxiety anyway. It's a bit of a thing that I go through from time to time. So my anxiety really sparked up pretty badly while we were over there. People look at you, they know you're a foreigner, and so to them, you're the carrier of the virus. So you're kind of like, there's no point in being away from home. It's just not fun. So we were in Cuba at the time that it had just started in Cuba, and we really felt for the locals there. It kind of like you could feel the panic in the air, and it just wasn't nice to kind of be around that. So we kind of then did the trek home, and so my poor sister, because there's no phone lines in Cuba, you can't really ring anywhere unless it's through the internet. I had to basically do messenger phone calls with her, and she organised our flights home. And, so she's changing 2 business models and trying to rescue us from overseas. So at the same time, it was not a good time for her. And yeah, but she was unbelievable.
So tell us about those couple of months when the industry opened up again. What's it been like? Almond Bar is in the centre it's in Darlinghurst, a little restaurant, and you've got the Café 3 Tomatoes out in the suburbs as well. What was that period like for those 2 very different businesses?
Look there, yeah, it was all about area, and that was, it was very obvious in that we could see that in Darlinghurst, where it's such a destination location for people to dine, the whole area just died completely. With the lockout laws that already kind of half killed the area, but this pandemic just completely just killed the area. So we had no choice in the end but to kind of, we're very blessed with an amazing landlord, because we've been there for 13 years, and he, was great and gave us the rent off for a couple of months. So we were able to close for a couple of months, until we kind of could have dine in again. So we had no choice, because the takeaway was just not, it just wasn't sustainable for us at all, and we were, spending far too much trying to keep it going. So that kind of wasn't very good for us. It was a really hard decision to make, but we knew, we just couldn't do it any longer. The cafe was at the complete opposite end of the spectrum, because we were in a suburban area. Everyone was home, kids were home. We were pretty flat out over there. We did a massive focus, and we still do, on take home meals. All our business was obviously takeaway at the time. So we've got a pretty great setup over there. We've got a bifold window, anyway, with a bench top. So that kind of was really helpful. So we just opened that up, and that's still going till now. We do have dine in, obviously limited. But a lot of our customers are still only wanting to do takeaway, and that's fine. So we haven't kind of taken that away. We've continued that from the outside window. We've got a fridge and kind of like a pantry section outside the cafe, and, just lots of stuff. It's funny, I've slowly been taking Almond Bar stuff to Three Tomatoes as well. So it's slowly, I'm selling flavored almonds over there, all these, like Middle Eastern dishes and stuff. So it's been, kind of good in that way that we've been able to kind of mix it up a bit.
What's your thoughts about Almond Bar? It's an amazing place, and you're a wonderful cook, but it's hard to make money in the city with such a small site. How are you feeling about Almond Bar at the moment with the landscape?
Look, we when we made the decision to open, we kind of thought, we've got to be smart about it, and our decision is that we would open for 3 nights only, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, which is what we've been doing for the last few weeks. We reopened about 5 weeks ago, and I think that's probably been the smarter thing to do. Just kind of start on that and then see how it goes. Already though, we've noticed a shift because of outbreaks in Melbourne, because of our, like small outbreaks here or whatever. And unfortunately parts of the media kind of saying, hey, avoid restaurants and gyms, and, we've already noticed that people are starting to make cancellations. And look, and I understand, I get it, completely, but unfortunately it's our business, it's our lifeline, and it's our baby. Almond Bar is our baby, and it always will be, I think, and we're just trying to really keep it going more than anything else, because it has been such a major part of our lives for such a long time. Ultimately, we don't want the pandemic to be the reason we go down. We want it to be our choice, not a forced hand. So, we're trying to basically do the best we can.
Well, Almond Bar has been a part of so many people's lives. It's what you've gifted Sydney is an extraordinary little restaurant. Can you tell us a bit about the history and how it started?
Yeah, so we opened in 2007. My sister and I kind of always knew we'd do some kind of food business together, and then we thought, what better food to share with everyone than the food that we grew up with, and so it kind of started from there. Our parents have always been heavily involved as well. So mum does a lot of prep with me, and a cousin of mine, and dad was my, market man, and he'd go and, get our veggies, and he's our delivery guy. So he'd like bringing stock in for me as well. And, and we named it Almond Bar for over, our love, because of our love for almonds, essentially. Well, most roasted nuts in general, because they're such a big part of our culture to serve people when they come to your home. So we found it quite fitting to call it Almond Bar, because that's what we would serve to our customers when they would come to the restaurant. It's kind of like a welcome as well. So yeah, that's 13 years ago, and it's still going.
Can you tell us a bit about your food for people out there that may not have had Syrian food? And I know that you also have a kind of modern interpretation in some ways as well. But I'd love to hear some of your specialty dishes and what's involved with them.
Yeah, so Syrian food is, I might have a slightly biased opinion, but I think it's one of the best foods in the Middle East area. And I'd probably get killed by a lot of people for saying that. But it's very different. We have I guess in Syria we have such a vast array of different kind of cultures or minority groups that have kind of settled in Syria over the years. Historically, there's a lot of Armenian Syrians, there's a lot of Kurdish Syrians, and you hear of all these minority groups, unfortunately, through all the war that's been going on. But yeah, all of those groups have actually played a part in our food and our culture and, the whole hospitality kind of industry in general. In that I think what's different with Syrian food, a lot of people ask, what's the difference between Syrian food and, say, Lebanese food or etc. And I always tell them, it's the spices we use. We're very heavy-handed with using spices in our food. So our food isn't necessarily spicy. So it's not that chili element. It's more that we love to use different kinds of spices in different dishes. At work, I always have this issue with the poor guys at work who are like, is this enough? And I'm like, is this enough spice in this dish? I'm like, no, it's not, and they just watch me and they can't believe how much kind of spices I put into things, and so we're pretty big on that. So it's really like just really big flavors, anything that's kind of, we don't like simplicity in food. It's got to be quite full on. So it's got to be not so much rich, but just a lot of flavor. There has to be a lot of flavor, very well seasoned food. So, to probably the average palate can sometimes be a little bit salty. So, we love salty olives, we love salty cheeses, we love, generally just kind of like saltier foods and stuff like that. I think with Syrian dishes in particular, one that's probably a big issue of contention as well in the region is gabi. So gabi, I think, I personally believe, could be originated in Syria. Again, someone's going to kill me for saying that, but my kind of backing information to that is the fact that Aleppo in Syria has about 20 different types of gabi. So there's many varieties of gabi. So they're all, there's meat based and vegetable based, and such a great vegan option as well for people too. So it's great in that sense. Gabi is one, again, many different types of them, and shapes and sizes and the way they're cooked and etc. as well. My favorite ultimate Arab dish is matloubi blahmi. So it's called matloubi, which means upside down, and blahmi means in meat essentially. So our translations for dishes are very literal and don't sound very appealing when you actually say them in English. But it's basically upside down lamb dish. That's what it's kind of called in Arabic. And all it is just some rice. It's basically rice, fried eggplant, and lamb that's been cooked for a really long time in a stock. So you then use that stock to cook the whole dish together. So you pretty much cook your lamb, you put your rice and fried eggplant layered in a big kind of pot. And then you kind of spread that lamb around, and then you pour your stock on top and you cook that all together. Then you turn it out upside down and you throw, heaps of fried nuts. And I must mention that the nuts need to be fried in ghee. So it's normally almonds and pine nuts as well. So it's a really beautiful dish. And then you serve it with a good dollop of yogurt. So that's my favorite Middle Eastern dish, I think, to this day. And I just can't get enough of it. Just the textures and the flavors and again, spices that are used in it are amazing. But fatoush is my favorite salad as well. Again, for me, it's all about texture, that crunchy, that crispy bread, the citrus as well, and, sumac and stuff, and just that, array of color. It's such a beautiful salad too. But, I could go. Do you want me to keep going in? Because there's a lot, there's many,
You're
many out
making me
there.
hungry.
Yeah, I know. Me too.
Well, okay, so you and your sister, weren't always in hospitality. Like, how does a rehabilitation counselor and a maths teacher end up opening a restaurant?
Sounds like the start of a joke, doesn't it? Um, it's well, yeah, the maths teacher is thank God very well business minded, so that's good. It's been great that she's so good with numbers, obviously, and because it was a clear cut, kind of splitting of the roles. So I loved cooking. I always, just really enjoyed cooking. For me, cooking has always been a stress relief. Even as a child, I'd just bake stuff all the time and just, try and cook things and introduce stuff to my mum who, never cooked anything that wasn't Middle Eastern. So, like I got really fancy and taught her how to make honey soy chicken wings once. And that was like, the be all and end all at the time. In my defense, I was probably about 12 at the time. I was like, 12 or 15 or something, really young. And that was big for us to be eating that at home because we never ate anything that wasn't Middle Eastern, because my mum was the main cook. And so that's how I kind of got into cooking, and then would have part-time jobs in hospitality and stuff. And yeah, and my sister and I just kind of, it just works for us. She's the paperwork business person. And it's so funny, a lot of people kind of look at me and go, oh, you're always at work and, where's Carol and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, look, I'd much rather have my job any day over her job because I don't want to be sitting there crunching numbers and working things out and, yeah, dealing with that stuff. So it works for us. So that's how it kind of happened.
What's some of the challenges involved with running a business with a sibling?
I laugh because I think of the early days. We used to fight all the time, all the time. Just it was really hard because we went from having such separate lives as young adults to then, spending every day together. Spending a lot of time together. We went from seeing each other maybe a few times a week to 7 days, and that was really hard. So we'd kind of really clash quite a bit in the beginning. Now we do nothing but laugh, and it's probably been like that. I think the first probably 4 or 5 years were quite tough, and adjusting more so maybe the first couple of years. But I'd say over the last, at least 7, 8, 9 years, we're like best mates, you know. We laugh a lot together. We still try and spend lots of time together. We try and do a lunch here and there, Carol and I together, so we could just catch up on life because everything's very work. But yeah, we're constantly, the only thing we fight about now is telling each other that we need to have a day off, or take time off, or, don't come in, or, go home early, or, this is what we argue about now. Whereas, at first it was just, we were kind of a bit all over the place and trying to establish, our footing with it all.
A little earlier, you mentioned that you struggle with anxiety in different situations. How have you coped through the last couple of months with the anxiety of the pandemic and the impact on your business?
Oh man, um, the beginning of it was really rough. Being in that isolation at home. Thank God I was at home, not in a hotel. But being in that isolation at home for 2 weeks, that was really hard. I spent a lot of time just staring out the window, feeling absolutely helpless. And generally I have a lot of support, because I have had some pretty bad bouts of anxiety previously. About 3 years ago, I had like a really rough period for a few months. I kind of have learnt certain kind of strategies on how to deal with things. So, it's more about trying to bring yourself back down to earth. I try, occasionally try and meditate if that helps. I do see a therapist from time to time if it gets really out of hand. I do have a really strong support network. I have a great partner. Yeah, it's I have lots kind of available to me, and I'm pretty lucky in that sense. I think the other thing is that that everyone's going through the same kind of thing, whether we talk about it or not. You can see it, with our customers. When you do talk to them, you can kind of feel the anxiety that they feel, as well. I think anxiety is a very energy based kind of feeling too. And I think you sometimes get that energy from people, and you have to kind of respect that and understand that we're all kind of going through those moments. And although we might be laughing, 1 minute you might have a really crappy thought the next minute, and that's how it kind of works. And that's so I go through those phases, but I think a lot of people are too. So you just have to keep going and try and be as rational and as safe as possible.
I know you find a lot of solace in food, and I commend you on your brevity in describing dishes back then, because I know that we could probably talk for hours with your favourite Middle Eastern
Yeah.
dishes. Um, what is it that you love about cooking? You briefly mentioned earlier that you would rather that job than your sister's job. What is it that you love about it?
There's a lot to love about cooking, like it's funny because and I think everyone loves food. Everyone loves food, and you almost feel like you've got this special job in so many ways, when you go to a friend's house or you visit people or people talk to you and stuff, 9 times out of 10 people are talking about food. All conversations that go on around us a lot of the time involve some kind of food or food experience or things like that. And I think what I love about working with food and being blessed to have, to be able to work with food and food that is so beautiful as well. We're so lucky in Australia to have such like amazing ingredients and access to so many things. Um, you know, for me, it's about making people happy. It really is. It makes me happy to know that people are happy. And although I find it really hard to kind of accept compliments and stuff like that, I still, deep down, of course, you're touched by someone's compliment. You really feel it, and and to know that I created that experience or that happiness, even for an hour or whatever it was, or the 10 minutes it took them to eat a dish, that means a lot to me. And that's what makes me happy, to know that was able to create something that created happiness for someone else as well, while also, it makes me happy to do it. It's fun. You're in your own world. You basically, you kind of shut off from everything and everyone when you cook, I find. And that is kind of a nice feeling to be able to have.
Has the offering changed at Almond Bar given the limited days that you're open now, and has this experience changed what you think you might do with it moving forward?
Yeah, look, we've definitely, we kind of took our time a little bit with reopening, because we kind of wanted to get it right, as right as possible given the way things have changed. So we kind of said, we've just got to be organized. And so what we did was we agreed on two set menus, so which is what we do at the moment. So it's changed completely. We're not doing the a la carte unless it's takeaway. And obviously that creates for a minimum spend. It creates for what, like, lack of wastage essentially. So we don't have the wastage. We know how much we need and for how many people, etc. So there's no concern over having an excessive amount of stock. So we've reduced the menu so we wouldn't have this kind of bigger menu to worry about as well. And, for us, it was really important to make sure that we had kind of like a mixed set menu that had, seafood, meats, and vegetarian, but we had to have a vegan option, a vegan set menu for us, because we have quite a big vegan following in Darlinghurst. So that was really important for us to do as well. So that's how we've kind of created those two menus, and they seem to be working quite well. Has it made us consider things for the future? Yeah, of course. Like how we would kind of do service, and right now everything's so touch and go. You don't know what's going to happen in the next week, let alone the next year. And like anything can change and restrictions could change and stuff like that. So we're kind of just going with it. My sister and I have agreed to just go with whatever happens, make the changes when they come, and do our best, and that's all we can do. Ideally, obviously, we'd like to keep going the way we are, as long as it covers our costs and keeps us going, then we'd like to do that. Because it seems to be working for us and for our customers at this stage as well.
Your food, and certainly Syrian cuisine, is best put in the middle of the table and shared by everyone. But obviously there's restrictions and different thoughts in society because of the pandemic. What's it like being managing guests during this period and the restrictions, and also the plating of your food? Has that altered at all?
Um, we look. I was always OCD clean, but now we're like, because we have a mother who taught us to be very OCD clean in a traditional Arab household, but now it's like tenfold worse. So we're really conscious of everything. Not just what we're doing, but what our staff are doing, what our customers are doing. We're just very aware of taking everyone into account, because you definitely, we still kind of have it as sharing food, but we also kind of, everything's a bit more clear cut. So if we can try and do dishes that are, a piece per person, things like that, then we try and do that. But obviously that's not always, possible. And so there's, we have rice dishes as well, and salads and stuff. So, yeah, we're trying to kind of, take into account with, the amount of touching of things, etc. So we're still hanging on to the shared stuff. But like I said, it's a bit more limited with how we kind of serve things. We're definitely aware of, the space and making it safe and comfortable for everyone. And so what we do is, with our customers, we kind of, are very conscious of how they feel, making sure that we're following, regulations and restrictions and whatever, as much as, as we need to, but like moving forward and constantly as well. Again, it's probably my anxiety that is good in this kind of situation, because I'm like, nah, we've got to do this and that, we've got to do that. And, this customer can't be standing and this customer, like, so you've got to be a bit onto it like that, I think. And I think people feel safer in that way as well, knowing that they can come in. The amount of stories we hear of customers that come into us and say, oh, I went to such and such, and they weren't social distancing, and, there were so many people, and, people talk, and so that, and they won't go back to that place, so as much as that place thinks, hey, it's okay, it's working for us, customers do talk to one another. They talk to us. They talk to their other, local cafe or whatever as well, and they, explain their experiences and how, they felt unsafe here, but they felt safe there, and that's just something we've got to take into account. And at the end of the day, like, our parents are in their 70s, like, we want to be safe for them as well. So, and our staff and everyone that walks through our doors.
You love cooking for people and sort of delivering an abundance of colours and flavours and textures. But what about when you're in restaurants? What do you love about being in a restaurant yourself?
It's the whole experience, it's from the moment you walk in, it's from that point, I think the energy, the ambience of a place, the staff, like, just everything about it, the menu. My partner's often the one that chooses the wine, so I'm like straight onto the food. Just the flavors, like appreciating the work that goes into it, it's such an experience. Being in a restaurant, I think it's not just about necessity of eating, it's an experience. And I think, that appreciation for that experience, and just the minor details in things really goes a long way with everything. And I think that's what I love about being in a restaurant, that just that feeling of knowing that, someone's cooked for me. Someone who wants to be cooking is cooking for me, and someone who, knows about wine can, teach us a thing or two, or, it's nice to kind of experience that. Like, it's actually such a privilege to be able to do that, I think, as well.
Do you think restaurants will change moving forward, and there'll be a greater appreciation for, more unique, smaller operators like you?
Um, Look, I think yes. I think there will be a change. I think a lot of changes will occur via the operators. I think if this pandemic has definitely brought out a positive for a lot of small business operators, it's that we all need to slow down. And we probably realize how exhausted we are when we were forced to slow down. And in that case, once you do that, I think the way we operate our businesses will definitely change, because you'll be more relaxed. You'll have that energy, that renewed energy in you to be able to, put more love into your service, into your food. If you're exhausted and you're basically flogging yourself to get through, 6 or 7 nights a week of service, then, that's proof that, something's got to give, and it does eventually. But, I think definitely moving forward, this has definitely taught a lot of small business owners about probably what's important as well, and that we need to remember to put ourselves first sometimes, at least, too.
What would you say is important to you moving forward, having gone through this experience?
I think what's probably taught me, or what I've learned, from this experience, is getting more sleep. That's probably been one of the biggest things. It was really strange going from working nights, mostly nights for 13 years, to suddenly stopping and not doing any of that for 2.5 months was a real hit to my body. I think, it was really strange to spend so much time with my partner. We've been together for 6 years, and then suddenly we were doing normal stuff at home together, like having dinner, every night at home, and doing that kind of thing. So we had spent more time together in 2.5 months than we had in 6 years. So, definitely the importance of well-being, for yourself and your relationship and your family, and, and that you need to prioritize that a little bit more, and that way you can give more to your business and to your work and to your customers and to your staff.
As we move forward and restrictions ease and, the restaurant's a thriving hub again of Darlinghurst, what should people eat when they come in?
That's a tough one, Anthony, especially when I'm trying to change the menu every few weeks. Oh, look, there's a couple of dishes. There's one that I've kind of just created on a very quick whim. So I've realized as well that I create menus much better when I'm under pressure and do them last minute. So it's a dish that's basically some fried crushed potatoes, and on top we just put some really thinly sliced beef rump. But the sauce that I put on top of it is called samkihara. So it's a samkihara sauce. Samkihara means chili fish. So traditionally this sauce is used to bake a whole fish, and you're supposed to kind of just smother it all along the top of the fish, inside the fish, and then you bake the fish whole. And it's a sauce that's made up of tahini, lots of lemon juice. I do dry coriander, fresh coriander, chili, and walnuts and garlic. So it's a really full-on sauce, but it's really beautiful, and it just actually works really well with most things, but I've found it worked really well with the beef, and so that's been really popular over there. And the other one is probably the vegan pick, I think, is probably a little play on a traditional dish that I never used to like as a child. So it's coarse burgol, so the cracked wheat with lentils. So we use some French lentils in that, and traditionally it's just those two ingredients. So it's literally just cooked burgol and lentils, and we do some burnt onion on top. But this time I've added some roasted flat mushrooms through it, lots of kind of like ground whole spices through there as well, and we still do the burnt onions on top. So that's a really nice kind of vegan dish too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gee, I miss Almond Bar.
Yeah.
Well, it's been so good to talk to you today. You're a bloody legend, and long live Almond Bar. Hopefully I get to eat there again soon. I
hope so too.
Keep in touch, and we'll catch up down the track and see how things are going, and hopefully all things are opened up and it's blossoming like it has for the last 13 years.
Thanks, Anth. I appreciate it.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we share the stories of Australia's hospo community, suppliers and producers in search of hope during this pandemic. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.